So today we're going to talk about beans. This is the cooking part of the show. I was really excited to do a cooking show. It's what got me started on this whole thing in the first place. And we're starting with beans, and you think, why would you start with beans? So beans are pretty simple. And reason number one is this is very technically challenging. I am having a really hard time figuring out how to do the camera and cook and do stuff. So beans are easy. And so technical difficulties aside. The other reason is because beans are very, very healthy. Most of the recipes that you find on this show are going to be like basically delicious recipes for health. So beans are super healthy. Let's just start with beans. There are some cultures across the globe that have been studied and looked at why do these people live to be 100? They're healthy, they're active. That's one part of it. But another part is they have a lot of beans in their diet. Every day they eat beans, every day they eat nuts. So if we can add more beans to our diet, that might be something to keep us much, much healthier. People who eat beans have been shown to have less cardiovascular disease, so heart disease, tend to have better weight control, less type 2 diabetes. Beans contain a lot of B vitamins, proteins, fibers, minerals, and healthy fats. And I'm looking at my cheat sheet to make sure I don't miss any of them. So there are some controversies around beans. I mean, how can there not be controversies about beans? That's, to me, very funny. But one of the controversies is, do we soak or do we not soak? Okay. I used to soak beans, which kept me from making beans. By the time I figured out like, oh, gee, maybe I want to make beans, then I have to soak them, and then it takes room in the fridge and then or on the counter, and just figuring that out was too much. It turns out you don't have to soak beans. If you cook them a little bit longer, they will get soft. The reason you might want to soak beans, though, is that there's something called a oligosaccharide. It's a sugar that a couple sugars that don't really digest well in your intestines, and they make it all the way down through the stomach, through the small intestine, into the large intestine. That's where the bacteria start to break them down and cause a lot of flatulence. So by soaking, bring the bean up to temperature for about, just bring it to temperature to a boil and then turn it off for 15 minutes. Dump that water, and the oligosaccharides will actually have come out of the bean into the water, and you can dump it right down the drain. I thought it was very funny that people actually study this. I thought, how do they figure this out? Is there somebody like counting flatulence? But it turns out they actually are looking at the nutrients in the bean and in the water and figuring that out. So I felt a little better about those poor researchers who are doing that and not counting flatulence. So I have now started soaking beans. It's very quick, it's very easy, and the flatulence goes down the drain. You can also use something called just Beano. I am not sponsored by Beano or anything like that, but it's an enzyme that will break down those oligosaccharides and decrease the flatulence. You have to take it before you start eating so that it goes down with the bean itself, but it actually works. You want to avoid this if you are galactosemic, and you would know. Honestly, it's a genetic disorder, and I couldn't tell you what it is. But it is somebody who can't break, who couldn't use this medication. Lost my train of thought. What was I talking about? Okay, we were talking about flatulence. So I now soak my beans. The other thing is there's also controversy about lectins. So people have steered away from beans recently because of this thing called lectins. Lectins are an anti-nutrient. They are found in beans. They're mostly in the hull of the bean, but they boil off really quickly and really well. And if you were to eat dry beans that were uncooked, there could be lectins in them. We don't know what they do for humans, but they've been studied in animals, and they can cause inflammation, other issues. So for us in the cooking process, that's just coming out anyway. So your lectins are pretty much gone. You do want to cook your beans at a higher temperature, though. I was digging the slow cooker bean cooking method that I had discovered. You put it in the morning, you go do your daily activities, you come home and some beans are done. That's probably not the way to go. You want a higher temperature, cook out those lectins if you're concerned about that at all. So let's get started to cook our beans. I'm going to move the camera down onto the cutting board. I'm going to do it slowly and carefully so you don't see the rest of my kitchen, which was another barrier to getting this done because I did not want to have to clean the whole kitchen. So right there, only the part that has been cleaned up. Nicely done. Okay, so beans are super easy. You start with your bag of beans. I'm going to do black beans today. You can do canned beans, okay? I've got 3 different canned beans here. We're going to talk for a second about sodium. When I first started, I said, hey, how much sodium can I safely use? How much is in these canned beans? And I started measuring with my little scale here. Hey, like how much sodium? Well, it turns out that it's not like my big vat of sodium. The average daily sodium that you're supposed to have is 2,000 milligrams. There is 2,000 milligrams of sodium. That is a 1/4 teaspoon, and I don't even have it full. Okay. That's 2,000 milligrams of sodium. That is all you're supposed to get in your entire day. That includes any processed food. That includes any food that you sprinkle on. And the American Heart Association is actually starting to recommend that we go down to, look at that, 1/8 of a teaspoon. Look how tiny that is. That is like almost no salt. So you got to be super careful. That really helps your heart continue to function well. Okay. So in one of these cans of beans, I've got 3 different types of beans, or 3 different makers of beans. 2 of them have 135 milligrams per serving, which means that's pretty low. If you're going to about 2,300 milligrams of sodium per day, but one of them, and I'm not going to tell you which one, has 450 milligrams in one serving, 3.5 servings per can. So now you're at your daily limit from what the Heart Association would say you need, or max that you can have, right there in 1 can of beans. So you want to be pretty careful. That's why I make my own beans. The health between the 2 is probably the same, but the dried beans, 1, taste tons better, and 2, I can control the sodium, and it's also way cheaper. This bag was like $2. These cans were each $2. This is going to make me like 8 cans. And you say, what do you do with all those beans? I put them in the freezer and pull them out in batches. So cost effective, healthy, and easy down the line. So the first thing I do is I am going to sort my beans. Always look for rocks in your beans. So it's probably making a little noise. Look for rocks or other things that might be in there. Sorting methods in this day and age are so much better than when I was a kid. I remember pulling out rocks and other kind of materials. Now the beans are like really clean, and I haven't found a rock in like a couple of years. So that is kudos to the technology in the bean industry. So let me finish sorting my beans. I've got my glasses on so I can really see. I see no rocks. I'm going to wash my beans. Okay. Come over to the sink, rinsing them off, moving them around a little bit. Okay. Beans washed. Beans washed. Didn't really think about this part in the video. Now I got to bring the wet beans back over. Okay, wet beans back over here. And I'm going to throw those in my pot. Okay. Now you can add whatever you want to beans. I think for me, for black beans, I like a little bit of garlic and a little bit of cilantro. I freeze cilantro in the summer when it is in the farmer's market, or I've grown it and it's really easy. I just cut it in, or you can just, buy some. But I like to minimize shopping and have just cook with everything in the house already, like just easy. If I am feeling a little strapped for time, I might just grab my jar of garlic and throw some in. But since we're trying to make this nice, I will put in chunks of garlic. I just throw them in. I used to cut them or chop them or use that little thing that smashes them up, but that is just too much time and effort. So I don't do that anymore. Just chunk it in, comes out exactly the same. Okay, the only thing you have to do is you do have to peel it or you get things floating in there. I did try that. That didn't work out so good. Like that. Okay. And I will add, once I start cooking it, I'm going to add some cilantro. So that's what it looks like. I'm going to fill my water about 2/3 of this pot. Okay. Water going in for my future videos. I will remember things like this, and I will have the water right there to dump in. Since this is a work in progress, we are just filling the water, filling the water. Okay. Don't forget your beans are going to absorb a lot of the water, so you need a little extra. Okay, so you can see I've put quite a bit of water in there. It doesn't really matter. You really can't overwater it. And sometimes the water is so good you can just eat it like bean soup. So not a problem with water. Now, this is about 8 cans of beans. So if you got one of the cans of beans that really wasn't that high in sodium, you would get about one of these teaspoons. So I'm going to try this. Beans love salt. I'm going to try this with a little lower salt now that I recognize how much salt we can eat. I mean, that's so little salt. Sad. Okay, I'm going to put in a couple of those, and that's like, that is 3 days worth of salt, and that's about let's see. That's a lot of servings of beans right there. That's actually 4 meals for 2 people each who ate a lot of beans. So that's the amount of salt I'm going to try. I forgot to do the boiling. Well, I'm not going to boil this. I will take the Beano and I put it on the stove, and in about 2 hours, the beans will be cooked and ready, and they'll be delicious. And it's that simple. So hopefully you will start to eat more beans. We're going to talk about beans more in the Mediterranean diet and other diets that have a lot of beans. So you already have a recipe, you're already ready to go, and good luck.